Becoming a U.S. citizen is a very important decision. The United States is a nation of immigrants. Throughout our history, immigrants have come here seeking a better way of life and have strengthened our nation in the process. When you decide to apply for naturalization, which is the process of becoming a U.S. citizen, you will be showing your permanent commitment to the United States and accept all responsibilities of being a citizen. In return, you will be rewarded with the rights and privileges of citizenship. In this presentation, we will cover the rights and responsibilities of U.S. citizenship, the eligibility requirements, and the complete process from submitting the application to attending the oath ceremony. It is also important to note that the processing time will vary from office to office, and you should visit www.uscis.gov/processing times to learn more about how long it will take your local USCIS office to process your application so you can set expectations for yourself. As previously mentioned, there are many benefits of becoming a U.S. citizen, and you can see them on this slide. When you become a citizen, make sure you also register and vote. This is an automatic right, and nobody can take it away from you. You also get to carry a U.S. passport, and this means you will get the assistance and the protection from the U.S. government if you ever have any problems while traveling overseas. With a U.S. passport, you can also travel to certain countries without having to obtain a visitor visa first, so as long as you stay 90 days or less. You can run for elected office like a mayor, governor, or congressman. You can work for any federal government agency and receive many great employment benefits. You can serve on a jury and participate in the legal system of this country. You can upgrade family petitions. As a lawful permanent resident, you can only sponsor 3 categories of family members. This includes your spouse, children under the age of 21, and unmarried children over the age of 21. When you become a U.S. citizen, it increases to 6 categories. It includes the first 3, and now your siblings, your parents, and married children. 2 other incentives not listed is 1, there is no time limit on how long you can remain outside of the United States. And 2, if you have any children who have their green cards, is under the age of 18, and they live with you, they automatically become a U.S. citizen the same day that you do. One of the most important things to know about this process is that USCIS generally focuses on a specific time period to determine if you qualify to become a U.S. citizen. It is called the statutory period and will be determined when you submit your application. The statutory period is 3 years if you're married to a U.S. citizen, or 5 years if you're not, from the date you submit your application and up to the oath of allegiance. So during the last 3 or 5 years, USCIS will check to see if you have met all the requirements to become a U.S. citizen. Here are the general requirements that a person must have to be granted U.S. citizenship, and we will be discussing in detail about each. So a person must be at least 18 years old, be a U.S. lawful permanent resident, meet the continuous residence and physical presence requirements, live in the USCIS district where they apply, have good moral character, have a basic understanding of the English language, knowledge of the U.S. history and government, and attachment to the Constitution. Everybody has to have been legally granted a lawful permanent residency, and there is a wait time to apply. If you're married to a United States citizen, you have to be a lawful permanent resident for 3 years. If you're not, you have to wait 5 years. There are some exceptions to military service members. Because it takes USCIS a long time to process applications, a person can file 90 days early of having the lawful permanent resident status for 3 or 5 years. So for example, if applying under the 5-year rule, the earliest you can apply is 4 years and 9 months from the date of being granted lawful permanent resident status. By the time you appear for your in-person interview, you will have fulfilled the full 5 years. If you are eligible to apply based on a marriage to a United States citizen, these are the requirements you must have. You must be a lawful permanent resident for 3 years, be married to the same spouse who sponsored you for 3 years, and that spouse must be a citizen for 3 years. The N-400 application does require additional documentation for this category. You must establish that you are still legally married and living together. Continuous residence is an immigration term that basically refers to one extensive trip during the statutory period. When you are a lawful permanent resident, you are telling USCIS that the United States is your permanent home, so having an extensive trip could call that into question. Here in this chart, you will see 3 types of scenarios for continuous residence. For the first row, if you had one trip during the statutory period that was less than 6 months, you have met the requirement for continuous residence and is still eligible to become a U.S. citizen. In the second row, if you had one trip that was 6 months or more, but less than 1 year, you may have broken this requirement and you will be required to provide additional evidence. The evidence must show that you still had ties and connections to the United States during your absence. This may include that you still had a job in the United States, your family was still here, your children were still going to school here, you still pay taxes. In the third row, if you had one trip that lasted 1 year or more, you have not met the requirement and you will not be eligible for citizenship. In fact, if you're applying under the 5-year rule, you now have to wait 4 years and 1 day from the date that you return before you're eligible to apply. Physical presence is an immigration term that basically means you need to keep track of all your trips, regardless of length, during the statutory period, and make sure you have been physically in the United States at least half of the time of that statutory period. So for example, if the statutory period is 5 years, there is 60 months in 5 years. You will need to have been physically in the United States for at least 30 months total to be eligible under this requirement. You must live in the office's jurisdiction for at least 3 months before that field office can naturalize you. If for some reason you move after you have started the application process, make sure you update your address on the USCIS website so that your file can be transferred to the appropriate office. You must show good moral character during the statutory period and up to the oath of allegiance. On the N-400 application, there are approximately 50 questions that ask about good moral character. These include, have you ever been arrested? Have you claimed to be a U.S. citizen before? Have you registered to vote or actually voted? Do you have any ties or connections to any terrorist organizations? If you have any issues during the statutory period, it may affect your eligibility, and you are encouraged to seek out legal consultation before you start the process. In general, things that occur outside the statutory period will not affect your eligibility. However, there are some things, regardless of when it happened, could be a permanent bar from becoming a U.S. citizen. An example is if someone who was convicted and sentenced for an aggravated felony. In general, you must be able to understand, speak, read, write basic English, and have knowledge of the U.S. civics. The understanding and speaking portion is when the officer is reviewing the N-400 application and verbally asking the questions from the form. You will have to read and write one sentence, and you will receive a list of vocabulary words in advance to study the reading and writing portions. For the civics test, there are currently 2 types of tests. If you filed your application before December 1st, 2020, you will take the 2008 version. This means you will have to study 100 civics questions, and during the interview, the officer only asks you 10 questions, and you need 6 correct to pass. If you filed your application on or after December 1st, 2020, you will take the 2020 version. This means you will have to study 128 questions, and during the interview, the officer will ask you 20 questions, and you need 12 correct to pass. You are given 2 chances to pass any portions of the test, and the second opportunity generally takes place within 90 days of the first interview. There are some applicants who, based on their age and how long they have been a lawful permanent resident, they do not need to take the English test and can take the civics test in their native language. In the chart here, you can see the 3 categories. So at the time of filing, if the person is at least 50 years old, has been a lawful permanent resident for 20 years, They do not have to take the English test, and they can take the civics in their native language. If they're at least 55 years old, has been a lawful permanent resident for 15 years, again, no English test, and they can take the civics in their native language. If the person is at least 65 years old and has been a lawful permanent resident for 20 years, no English test, and they can take a simplified test in their native language. So there is another exception to the testing based on a medical condition. If you have a medical condition that prevents you from learning, your doctor can fill out the N648 form, and the form must be submitted with the influent application. The doctor must explain what the medical condition is, how it prevents you from learning, that it was not caused through drug use, and that the condition has lasted 1 year or more or will last 1 year or more. If the officer accepts the N648, you do not have to take the English test or the civics test. The last requirement is having an attachment to the U.S. Constitution. By taking the oath of allegiance, you are promising your loyalty and support to the United States and its Constitution. To apply for citizenship, there are two options. It is recommended that you apply directly on USCIS's website. To do this, you will have to create a My USCIS account. However, you can still apply by printing out the form from the website, attaching the supporting documents and fee, and mail it to the address on the website. Mailing addresses will depend on what state you reside in. As of now, those who are eligible for the fee waiver cannot file online and must file the traditional method. During the interview, the officer will call you to their office, place you under oath, give the reading, writing, and civics test, assess your ability to understand and speak English, and review the influent application to determine eligibility and make any necessary changes and updates to the form. It should be noted that for the reading and writing test, it will be done on an iPad and not a piece of paper. Once the application is approved, you will be scheduled for an oath ceremony, and after taking the oath of allegiance is when you officially become a United States citizen. USCIS will take away your green card and give you the certificate of naturalization. Once you receive your certificate, you must update your status with Social Security Administration. After this, you can apply for a U.S. passport with the passport agency. A U.S. passport will be required to return to the United States after international travel. USCIS has a website dedicated to free resources to help you prepare. These include practice tests, study materials, list of vocabulary words for the reading and writing test, videos, audio learning, and how to find a sister class. There are sections for teachers and libraries as well. Again, the website is www.uscis.gov/citizenship. It is also very important to familiarize yourself with the USCIS's online tools and resources. These tools will help you manage and track the status of your application. These tools also allow you to change your address, check processing times, download free blank forms, and ask a question about your case. If you prefer, you can also call the USCIS Contact Center at 1-800-375-5283 for assistance. There are a lot of immigration fraud and scams that is happening in immigrant communities. Therefore, it is important for you to know about what type of scams exist, how to avoid being a victim, how to report if you are a victim, and how to find good, qualified legal assistance if you need it. The USCIS Avoid Scams webpage has lots of great information regarding all of these topics. If you need legal assistance, you can only go to an immigration attorney or a DOJ Department of Justice accredited representative. You can research for these types of legal assistance on the Avoid Scams webpage. The next two slides talks about some helpful tips and reminders. You should try to have at least 6 months left on your green card before you apply. If you have 6 months, you will be eligible to request a temporary green card stamp in your passport while you wait for your application to be processed. If you have less than 6 months, you can still apply for citizenship. However, to get the temporary green card stamp, you will need to apply for a new green card first. If you cannot file online, make sure you are submitting the correct version of the form and mail it certified or registered. Always keep a copy of the informed application to study and prepare for the interview. Only submit photocopies of any supporting documentation and bring the originals to the interview. No name changes are allowed with the process of naturalization. Our district does not have a judge that conducts our oath ceremonies, and only a judge can grant a legal name change. Give yourself extra time to look for parking and clear security. It should be noted that due to COVID-19, you will not be allowed to enter earlier than 15 minutes before your interview time. You will also have to answer health screening questions before you can enter the building. Bring all passport and reentry permits that was used to travel during the statutory period to the interview. This will make it easier to verify your trips. If you qualify to have an interpreter, please make sure the interpreter is available by phone. Due to COVID-19, we have to limit the number of people in our offices, and interpreters must appear by phone only. You can travel after you submit your application. Just make sure someone is available to check your mail so they can inform you of any upcoming appointments. For any general information or assistance, please check our website or call the contact center at 1-800-375-5283. If you need to visit our office for in-person assistance, like requesting the temporary green card stamp, you must schedule an appointment first by calling the contact center. Make sure, if you move, that you update your address within 10 days of moving on our website. If you are feeling sick, please request a reschedule. Do not attend your appointment because we do not want to continue the spread of COVID-19. You can call the contact center or write a letter directly to the office requesting a reschedule. Please follow instructions carefully on the appointment notices. There may be specific information that only pertains to your office about preparing for the interview. Bring your own blue or black pen to the interview. Everybody who's 2 years old or older is required to have a face covering before they can appear for their appointments. This includes the biometrics, the interview, and the oath ceremony. Do not bring family or friends to the oath ceremony. Due to COVID-19, we have to limit the number of people present. The structure of the oath ceremonies will vary from office to office based on their resources and staffing.